pretty big.
Yeah, it's too long to do at the beginning of a show that you want to keep to about an hour, hour and a half, right?
Good.
So and then I'll just let you summarize your points, and then we'll go to Darsh and what he thinks, and then I'll come back with some of mine, and then we'll go back and forth for a little bit about just, the community and the way things have been over the years, and then we'll go to some callers and see what they think. Sound good?
Right. Done.
All right.
I'll be quiet.
No, I hate you.
All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Answer the Call. And today we have a very, very special episode with two guests. We had a flight model or combat discussion with Zimmy and Whitesnake a while back, but Nubifier recently came out with a video discussing his issues with the flight model. And while I was watching it on stream, Darjanator, who does the Fortnightly Frontier podcast with Meyer, had some very strong opinions, kind of in the opposite of what Noob thought. And I thought, what a great show to put together, have both these guys come on, and we will have that discussion. So we're going to jump right into the show. And we have Noobifier and Darsh here. Hi, guys. Welcome. How are you?
Noobifier.
Noobifier. I spelled it right, right?
World War II is still a long time ago.
Did I spell it wrong? I'll fix it if I didn't.
No, it's fine. You just said Noobifier.
Oh, did I say Noobifier? Okay, I'm sorry. I had a long night of work. But anyway,
don't worry about it.
Just real quick before we start out, we'll just start with you, Noob. Who are you? If people don't know who you are, and what do you do, and all that stuff.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Nuba Fire, and for the last 4 years, I've been covering Star Citizen. Sorry, I'm looking up here instead of here. That's weird.
I do the same.
Anyways,
thing.
I try to condense stuff into no bullshit. And I mean, if you guys haven't checked out the channel yet, I would appreciate it. And those of you that do check out frequently, thank you for your support.
And you're on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah, YouTube, okay. And you can follow me on Twitch because it's funny.
People do it.
Because I would like to be the first I would like to be the first partnered
Yeah, to ever not stream, right? And then Darjanator, who are you? How, where'd you come from? What do you do? All that stuff.
Where did it come from? Where did I go? Where'd I come from? Yeah. Hi, I'm Darjanator. I don't stream Star Citizen, but I do run a Star Citizen podcast and have for the past 5 years. Actually longer than that we've had a playable Star Citizen. So yeah. I've been ranting and raving and also giving praise wherever applicable for quite a long time. And yeah, so I'm going to try to be a counterpoint to that guy over here.
All right, so let's get into it. So Noob, you made a video recently about kind of your thoughts on what's going on with the current flight model and some issues that you had with it. And just kind of summarize that video if you don't mind. And anybody that's watching this video on YouTube, it will be the first link in the description, okay?
Nice. Okay, so effectively, I've noticed, this all started from me noticing that I started to not enjoy Star Citizen the way I like to play it, or at least the way I remember it. And I'm going to go over everything. I understand. I'm not an idiot. I understand it's an MMO, that we have 1/10 of the game and all of that stuff. So believe me, I've taken all of that stuff into consideration. The video itself was my attempt to figure out and to put into words what happened between when I enjoyed it a lot and now where I find myself being able to play but not enjoy it. So I used to spend like 4 hours a night in Arena Commander because it was fun, and now I'll play it. I do still play. I went to Lorville once. I'm just kidding, but no, my focus is still space combat, and I also understand that there's a difference between space combat in PU and space combat in co-op and in battle royale, and that type of there's that different kind of balance that's needed for all three. So the video itself goes through 0.9, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and effectively what I've found is the thing I came up with was we were building this gigantic beast of a game on flight. and that's all we had. And then we moved to planets. Actually, 2.5 we moved more heavy into PU, and then we moved to planets, and then it seems like everything got thrown out the window. And that's scary. Everyone, all citizens should be very afraid of that, in my opinion, that we spent 5 or 6 hours polishing a turd and then just flushed it and started fresh, because everyone may not have the same level of contacts as a person who follows more frequently. But I believe that IFCS as we knew it was just thrown out the window, and they just called it IFCS, whatever we're flying on now. Kind of like the same idea.
Yep.
So I've actually presented, or I've actually prepared like a list just for this show of my opinion.
Okay.
Would you like me to shoot into that, or do you want?
I think that'd be perfect.
Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna read. So that's why my eyes are up here. Star Citizen is an MMO where you get to do tasks within a game mechanic.
Okay.
They're in order from where they were released, and that's space combat, cargo running, mining, and now pro trolling with the man-tits. Space combat in an MMO is being paid to escort, retaliation when needed, bounty capture, reconnaissance, espionage, sabotage, man tracking, exploration, strategic strike using stealth, denying passage, and controlling territory. All of that stuff is one component, and it was the first component. So there are all the ships in Star Citizen except for 2, and they're yellow, have guns mounted on them. And I know that the racers don't need guns, but they still come with guns. So what am I supposed to think when I see Star Citizen, right? Most land vehicles have guns mounted on them. We're meant to be killed and be killed in either PvE or PvP combat. And I know that there's more to the community doesn't necessarily want combat, but it's coming. And you can avoid it by paying people or choosing really, really well or being very, very lucky. But if you pay someone, they'll bring the combat for you. That's a game mechanic. That's something that we should want, right? So the Hornet commercial has a guy, a civilian flying in a Hornet going to get ice cream for his daughter, and he kills 2 pirates and lands like nothing was, whatever. And then the Freelancer commercial, same thing, a fat dude flying Freelancer, doing cargo, and then all of a sudden, boom, pirates, and he kills them, and he lands it like it was nothing. So the game was presented as Wing Commander. Like the fundamental core is like, this is what I built before, and this is what I would like to build for you. So all the promo Kickstarter backed up the claim, and I know that things change, but first module was Arena Commander, and they would spend years working on it to achieve a good flight model, and then that would become the core of the game, and then the game would be built on top of it. And that makes sense. If you're a backer, you're like, yes, we'll start here, and we'll just keep adding.
Yep.
The community grew. People complained. The combat was too hard. And then there was no way for a new player to ever be competitive in space combat, which is just bullshit. Like everyone had to start somewhere. I started and I learned and I got better through time. And I understand there's a difference between casual and non-casual and accessible and not accessible. But space combat, if it hadn't changed, people would still be getting better with it, right? From now. So the devs wanted to start catering, and that brought change. 2.5, when you, Twerk, were at, or SaltEMike, when you were at the live show, Chris announced that combat would need to be slower and closer because he wanted better cinematics. And then 2.6, even worse, right? And I say worse from my perspective. I know that it's maybe not worse from other people's perspectives. So then
do you mind if I jump in just for a second?
Yeah,
is when he said it would be lower and slower, it didn't really get slower yet, though.
No, but what he did do is they opened up the spread so that you had to be closer.
Yeah.
So he wanted to move us slower and closer.
But the flight never slowed down. We got closer.
No, but they also added cruise mode, and then they dropped SCM a little bit.
Yeah.
So it didn't physically get closer or slower, I should say. And the thrusters were still strong at that time. Still, 2.5 was still viable. And 2.6, even 2.63 was good. And then we had that 1 year lull, right? And someone just posted it up there. See, auto gambles make combat fun. Fuck. So I'm gonna keep going. So everything, they did a ground zero on IFCS when planets came out, and you had difficulty with ESP, you had difficulty with Gravlev, and atmospheric flight sounds good on paper, and it has the potential to be really good. Anyways, 55 ships listed as fighting or combat focused. 24 like the Cutlass and Avenger are multi-role security, and the rest of them are meant to be protected by those 55 ships.
Okay.
That's the way I saw the game. So the law system is good. We need the law system right now, and the law system is should be the only assurance in the MMO environment that we won't constantly be fighting PvP and PvE, because that's good. People shouldn't have to fight. I get that, but the law system is the mechanism that will prevent it. We shouldn't have to dumb combat down so that it's more accessible and start putting auto gimbals and all this crap in the game. All this, Anyways, treats. The leaderboard is now full of unfamiliar names, and that should be an idea on what's going on. Racing is dead. I'm sure that you have tried and failed to race or not enjoy it like before.
I haven't tried,
Commander
but I don't think it's dead, but yeah.
Okay. Arena Commander, I would say, is a hulk of what it was, like a husk, I should say.
Mhm.
And the point of the video was I needed to express and illustrate what happened, how things changed, and how I could tell you what was missing.
Okay.
That was the point of the whole thing.
Okay. So, and then at the time while we were watching it, I disagreed fairly strongly, and Darsh disagreed what seemed like very strongly, but obviously I'm reading in the Twitch chat, so it's a little bit more difficult to hear the tone.
Yeah.
So Darsh, it's your turn. So after Noob said his piece, what do you think?
Right. I'm gonna say that from the point of someone very invested in the whole physics of the game and not in the combat aspect. Sorry, traffic. What we have right now is it's probably the most pleasant flight model that we've had so far, especially when you count in the thruster power throttle that we were given. That is something that I've been wanting since the very first introduction of Arena Commander, because this is what I've been bitching from the start, is every ship is way too strong for what it is. The small ones, fine, but I've been watching some of the 1.3 videos, not just 1.3 but earlier, and it's like, especially coupled with the fact that there was no lateral G blackout, people were doing 15 to 20 G maneuvers all day, every day. And that just doesn't seem like it appeals to me, because the premise was supposed to be, for the Star Citizen, it's not computers flying ships, it's not drones, AI flying ships, it's people. So there have to be limitations. And if you're just flying at 15, 20 G all day, you're gonna liquefy yourself. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that also meant to brought up the feeling that ships felt like they had no mass. Everything was on rails. And then they went completely the other direction with everything, trying to make everything really floaty. But I think that right now they are zoning in on a good, healthy medium, where big ships feel like they're heavy. They have mass, and there's even some medium ships that are probably by design equipped with too low thrusters, especially the ones that had VTOL. I remember just a couple of days ago, I was flying the Prospector on Lyria, and I had to keep toggling VTOL mode if I didn't want to smash into the ground, because I just didn't have enough vertical thrust to keep myself in the air, which made it fun for me. It made me feel like I am piloting a big hunk of steel instead of just being in a very tiny probe, very, very tiny little ship with super massive thrusters strapped onto it that are able to fly like a fly everywhere.
That's atmospheric. That's
sure,
I understand that's part of the conversation.
But the most important part is actually the space flight, because that should have been the focus.
Because I'll agree with you 100%. The atmospheric flight,
but
should be
VTOL is not about atmosphere. VTOL is not about atmosphere, because it happens on Celen as well. Because VTOL is about gravity.
Sure. Let's call atmospheric flight as a general thing when you're flying near a planet's surface, and space combat being space combat.
Sure.
Because they're
So-
different object containers, and you end up, or physics grids, and as soon as you're out of atmosphere of a planet or moon, it's instantly 0G. You're not getting gravity. It doesn't affect you at all.
That is true. Yeah. The gravity well just cuts off way too quickly. I hope they address that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's assume that separation.
And before we just completely fuck off that entire part of the conversation, I'm fine with sabers flying completely atmospheric or planet-centric. This is to do with not dogfighting over a surface of something. This has to do with just space combat. The classic, what you've seen in Star Citizen, or in Star Citizen and like Wing Commander and all that. So again, another conversation could be that as you're coming into a planet, that you see the fire, and then your plane, because that's lack of a better term, your saber starts to fly like a plane. Your Vanguard starts to fly like a plane, and your Cartuel starts to fly like whatever the fuck a Cartuel is.
Yeah, it's supposed to fly like. Yeah.
True, but you have planetary bodies that have no atmosphere, so even a saber would not fly like a plane, even when we get control surfaces on the wings. They're not going to do anything.
But they could kind of screw that around. Like, you're still going to experience gravity and stuff like that. I'm not opposed to them faking some stuff in Star Citizen for the sake of balance. That's never been, you have your simulator and you have your game, and then you have something in between. It still has to be fun, right? Permadeath is truthful, but it's not going to come out the way they present it, where you're just going to die. They'll have some levels of death, and that's not accurate. So again, we can take some liberties.
Don't worry about the cars. It's okay. He's gonna change. He's gonna close the window because the cars are going by.
He's too OCD. It's fine.
I was gonna say, you don't have to worry,
because apparently
you don't have to worry about traffic. It
wasn't that loud.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I continue on if you have more, Darsh.
Well, but I'm just saying that you have these super maneuverable ships that can do 5-6 Gs vertically. Adding 1 G, or in the case of a Moon 0.3, is not gonna affect combat as much as you think it is. So atmospheric drag is the one that does it the most. But VTOL, the way some ships behave, happens whether you have atmosphere or not. Even it even happens on landing pads at R&R stations that have 1 gravity and there's no atmosphere there. So, but my point was that I like that the ships don't behave as if they have infinite thrust right now.
And you're coming from the perspective of not necessarily a combat pilot, right? Which is where the perspective that I come from too. And Noob did start with the fact that I understand that these people exist, but right.
But when development of Star Citizen started, combat was all we had, and I agree that a lot of people thought that is also what we're gonna have in perpetuity. But
not necessarily combat, but flight.
Sure.
Okay, I know that's semantics, right?
Yeah.
Combat
is the same. Combat and flight is the same thing. That's the idea. Because as soon as you change flight, you change combat.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but which is what happened.
I was going to say combat-oriented flight mechanics versus flight mechanics more oriented towards commerce or even sightseeing sort of type of flying.
Yeah. And the idea is clearly to not have one that's geared towards one or the other. It's one that works for both.
It's called the flight model, not the combat flight model and not the cargo flight model. And
it's
that's the thing.
Flight model.
That is so where the whole thing came from is the entire org had a conversation.
Yep.
And it was messed up because we're looking at 7 years and they're about to release Squadron 42, and someone, it wasn't even me, said, holy crap, they haven't even figured out flight yet.
Yeah.
Right. And technically, Darsh, you're right. They have. It's super good and whatever. But I don't see Squadron 42 being me in the UEE taking a Hull C across the galaxy and dropping off some boxes of poop. right?
That is
So
true.
that was my point. Is it is a combat focused game, and then they add auto gimbals and they add hover mode, whatever they were trying to achieve there. It obviously didn't work, and that's fine. We should be testing
Hover
stuff.
mode was a good idea, but very
Right.
badly implemented.
Agreed, but it's gone. The point is
Not yet. It's not.
fine. We were told. We were told cinematic space combat, blah, 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 flight. You are a soldier. You're going to kill people. You're going to interact with, Mark Hamill. It's going to be lovely. But the thing is, adding auto gimbals, although futuristic and realistic, takes away from gameplay. Because what they effectively did with that, give me a second, is we had fixed and mouse gimbaled, and there was a decent balance going on there. There was a fun balance. So you had a mixture of both. If you were brand new, you could choose to use gimbals, and then when you got plateaued, buy it. Malagos is the only person I know who didn't get plateaued by gimbals. And then you would switch to fixed, you'd get your skill up, and you'd have higher DPS, and you felt like a god, because when you hit that target, even though the pip wasn't on point, you knew from flying that you needed to aim a little bit higher or lower than the pip to get the target. And that's the thing. There were times where we knew that you could break lock because you could get between you and something else. That's also fake, because obviously the sensors are now in, and the sensors are super strong, and you'd be able to detect something on the other side. It was still a fun game mechanic. There was just so many things like that. Like, I used to be able to break a missile lock by popping chaff. It would just go away and it would start calculating again. There's little things like that I miss. Holding down boost would make the ship fly like an airplane. And that's, I think, what you're talking about, the 50G maneuvers, which are not realistic and would turn you into liquid. But what it used to be able to do, and I'm not asking for it to go all the way back to 1.3. I'm trying to find a middle ground where I still enjoy it, and then the community still thinks it's approachable. On the subject of approachable, one last thing. I'm sorry, I'm totally capitalizing. It didn't help
Noob
at
capitalizes is what he does.
Check this out. You give a bigger stick to the new guy, and you don't give it to the veteran. That's imbalance. So you give a big stick to the new guy so that he can hit the big guy, but the big guy has a bigger stick or the same stick, and he actually knows how to use it. So all that adding auto gimbal did isn't make the noob more competitive. It just made the noob die faster, because you can't use fixed weapons and be competitive. That's game breaking. That's the point. That's the whole point of this shit show from 0.9 to point whatever the fuck we are now, that it hasn't gotten better, and it needs to stop. That's whatever.
All right, and I'm going to do a little moderating here. Darj, you go, and then as soon as Darj is done, I'm going to make some points on auto gimbals, and then I'm going to get back to a little bit more on the flight stuff and what I was thinking and stuff like that.
All right. You have I would say, slightly too much of a bias when it comes to your approach, because you are that good of a pilot. But then there is 1.5 million other people right now waiting to play the game, if they're not playing it right now, that don't have that level of competence when it comes to any sort of flying, let alone just Star Citizen. So when a person that has that is so much below you in terms of competence in flying wants to join in the game and have fun in it, they need to be presented with a level that they can understand and grasp. So
Sure. But I didn't start there. I started and I pushed through. And I'm gonna say this.
But that's you, and that's
people.
Hold on, Noob. It's
People
so
are-
unfair.
Oh.
It's so unfair to say that. Like, this is where and this is where Darj is going, and this is one of the conversations that I was gonna have, is that a lot of the flight combat guys have. Don't take this the wrong way. I don't know any other way to say it, and it's not really directed at you, but it's the egos on those combat pilots they remind me of like Maverick, right? The egos are really big. they're really strong, and it's I did this and you should be able to too. But you don't come from the perspective of not even what Darj is saying, that they may not grasp it. A lot of guys may not have the time or the ability to put the effort in. It's not about caring.
Or they don't want to.
It's not about wanting. It's not being able to, right? People have kids and families and jobs, right? So this game, we want it to be accessible to as many people as possible. Go ahead.
Yeah, or they have, a lack of room on their desk. Like I've seen Noob's setup, I've seen your setup. You've got these the Monster Tech mounts with these joysticks on them. I have a mouse and a keyboard.
Mouse and a keyboard is competitive, though.
It is.
That's been
which is why I'm not, getting my ass handed to me all the time. But that is only because of the changes they made to the flight model. I had my ass handed to me all day, all night.
Those people aren't playing anymore because it's not fun.
But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't.
The competitive community isn't there anymore, which is why, like, they've basically given up. And you can see that if you go to the leaderboard. And again, we're going back and forth, and I do sound entitled and I do sound elitist and all that other stuff. It's not that. I want a major component of the game to not be pushed aside. A major component that we were pitched at the beginning. This is what exactly. Red Lear bailed. He's just literally cashed out. He doesn't care anymore. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just saying that that's a thing. Okay. I don't know. I'm not going to bail on Star Citizen, but I find myself not enjoying it like I did before. Before I would play only Star Citizen. Battlefield 4 came out. I didn't play it. Battlefield 5 came out. Didn't play. You know what I mean? Like, I was busy playing something else. And again, I'm not presenting the case properly. The video does a better job of that.
I think you're doing fine.
I'm just concerned. I'm concerned that as part of an MMO, I expected all of these other game mechanics to be dumped on top of a flight model. And again, it was supposed to be a homogeneous IFCS flight model that would work from Icarus all the way down to Argo, and it was going to be good, and it was the basis, and they worked on it, and then they seem to forgotten or not focus so much on it. And I know, like, trust me, I know they're working on it. They are polishing all aspects of it. The problem is, I think the people that they're listening to don't have the historical background to assess what and where is good. Because there were times that people got rid of, like, we were getting into the circle strafing, and that's horrible. That's boring, right? So they said, well, we can fix that by doing this, this, and this, and that didn't fix it. So then what you should, in my opinion, scientifically, just to go back to what you had, see if it comes back, and then iterate again, instead of just go 2 feet deeper into the unknown.
Yeah, and that's probably correct.
Good is subjective.
That's also true. But let me jump in here a little bit, because I think one of the things that is important is it's not being pushed aside, and you said that you know that it's being worked on, and you keep pointing out IFCS, and I know you did this thing with John Pritchett, and you're a John Pritchett fan, right? What I understand about John Pritchett's work was that it was bulky, and it was a little bit difficult to work with the actual game. So it needed to be reworked in some way or another. And then, guys, can you give me the name of current guy?
David Coulson.
David Coulson, thank you. David Coulson comes in, and now it's sort of his job to take what John Pritchett worked on and make it work a little bit better for the game, and not necessarily change it too much. But
I think
what happened was
they just started.
Well, I think they have to restart, but are bringing things over. The issues that I have, and I think Noob would probably agree with this, and probably Darjanator as well, is that I still agree with Noob 100%. They should have started with the flight model, and if you're going to have to rework this thing from the start again, then you do, right? And you have to go from that Arena Commander base of this is how space combat will work, and then bring it over to planetary combat. And for whatever reason, it seems like planetary flight is more important, like why hover mode was ever worked on at this point when we know that they're not happy with the current spaceflight model because they know that we're not happy with it, right? I found that to be incredibly weird. But Darsh, I'll let you jump in just 1 second. Is that one thing that Noob and the RS guys and a lot of the guys that I consider synonymous with combat, and I know that they're upset with it, is that David Coulson hasn't gotten there yet. The question is why, but let's let him get there. And I know he's listened to your feedback. I know that for sure. He's been in the Discords. He's talked to these people. So he must know it. But for whatever reason, the shift of the flight model moved to planets. Like the entire game has moved to these like planet things. And I've sit here and been entitled as well about where did my space game go? Where did it go? Right? It seems like a planetary based game now, but that, you know, so
it's
just
like Skyrim with spaceships.
Yeah, so a lot's changed, but I think that's why the focus has shifted there. And they've told us many times, and even in recent SCLs, that the focus is to slow things down, and the way that they're going to focus things to slow things down in the future is to create penalties for going too fast, which is something they haven't tried yet.
Right.
So that's
misfires, failures, all of that, all of those things that I was going to say against, not against, that's not the right word, but to counter what Darsh was saying, which was that they need this, this, and this, and this needs to be good. So instead of having a ship that can't do 5G, make the pilot fucking die.
Yeah.
Right? The ship can do 5G, but make it a penalty.
The pilot, well, and that's what Darsh is saying, is that the pilot
But we
can't.
had G-Safe, right? We had G-Safe for that. And then now G-Safe doesn't work anymore because we have stamina added to it. And stamina doesn't work the way it was supposed to. Stamina was supposed to make you gradually black out more and more and more, thus preventing you. Limited boost fuel. When you hold down boost, the ability to do this in space over an obstacle, or, oh my God, I'm about to hit a ship. Boom, the ship slams on the brakes. We used to have that, and now we don't. Now we just crash into shit, you know? So effectively, giving the pilot the choice if they want to trade damage or death for something, and that's up to the pilot. That's skillful. He or she knows the limitation of all of the systems and can make an educated guess in a split second as to what they want. And that's fun. That's good gameplay. We shouldn't throw that out just because cargo's good. And I know that sounds super condescending. We can have flight, combat, and cargo all at the same time on the same flight model. It doesn't need to be one or the other.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something here that you probably won't like, is that John Pritchett's IFCS model was faked.
Sure.
Because I remember that as soon as you turn off engines, ship stopped. And then when John Pritchett went away and John Coulson worked on the flight model for so many, I don't know how many months, I think he actually managed to implement a properly physicalized Newtonian system. Right. And what you're talking about is just a balance. Is how much thrust each thruster is actually able to output per ship. So when you have a fighting ship, you have small mass, you have powerful thrusters, you're able to do these maneuvers, but then the pilot suffers for it. And you have the same output thrusters on a much bigger ship, and that's gonna make the maneuvering feel a lot more sluggish because they have so much more mass to counteract. But it's just balance. I'm pretty sure that once they have, they could possibly already have it figured out how thrusters and ships are supposed to interact. Then they can work on the balance and bring it back more in line with what we had, which you say is more fun, and I think maybe not. But we now have the thruster power throttle, so I can just toggle mine down to 10%, 15%, and enjoy the more smooth cinematic maneuvering that I would prefer.
And let me turn it up to 100
because I have digital controls.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah. Let me have 100% and kill myself because the ship.
Yeah,
right.
But that's just balance. That's
let me jump in 1 second. Would you guys consider This is basically the point that I was trying to make. You guys remember Star Marine when Ilphonic worked on it? Me neither.
Do I ever?
Right? Because
I
it didn't
paid so
exist.
much money to try to forget that twerk.
Yes, but what Darj is trying to point out, and kind of what I was trying to point out, and I don't want to put the blame on John Pritchett because I don't think he is. No. But do you think that now that they've needed to rework this flight model, that we're sort of in a situation like that, where it's we needed to throw everything out the window because it was faked and because it didn't work the way we wanted it to. It wasn't what Chris wanted, and now we're getting to the point where they're bringing the pieces together again and starting to bring them together and starting to work on them again. I don't know why hover mode was ever worked on at this stage, but it was.
I have an idea.
And it is, right?
Oh, let's just talk about auto aim instead. Let's forget about hover mode.
No, we don't need to talk about hover mode at all. It's just that why was it a priority? Why was it a priority and not space flight? That's the only issue that I take.
And auto aim seems like they're giving up because they are.
Yeah, auto aim is a big problem.
Right.
It's
still
agree.
a big problem.
I think there's some really logical solutions to not get rid of it and to have it be and to have things balanced again. So I'll jump in real quick. Hold on. I'll jump in real quick because there absolutely are reasons. All right, and the reasons are, and this is where guys, and I hate to say it because it does sound condescending, but guys like you, flight combat guys, will always feel that there's no need for it because they don't need it. All right,
that's not what I said.
No, I'm not saying
there's
that.
No reason to fly fixed if there is auto gimbal.
Agreed. Which is the shit part about it.
Even competitive pilot will just go get the big stick. Is what
100%. That's the worst part about it, right? Now let's start with this basis, and I'll ask you both this question. Just quickly answer it. In a situation, I'm a new player and I'm out there in the verse, right? A pirate who is a very excellent pilot comes around. I'm rocking an Aurora, and he's rocking a Hornet. Should I ever have the ability to kill him? I think if I get really lucky and he makes a huge mistake or something, that's the only situation where I should. Just quickly, what do you guys think? That scenario specifically.
Yeah, the game shouldn't be punishing to the point where it just kills you for no reason. That's PvE, we'll say, for example. Exactly. Is that what you're talking about? PvE, like you're...
No, okay? I'm actually saying in a PvP scenario, I'm out there flying in the verse, a pirate comes around, a pirate player, PvP situation pops up, he's in a Hornet, I'm in an Aurora, I have size 1 weapons, he has size 2 and 3. Way. Probably not, right?
No fucking way. That's not how it works, man.
All right,
you have a tank versus a truck?
Of course. Let me continue. Right now, if it's fixed versus auto gimbals, there's a chance that the Aurora kills that pilot, correct?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big problem.
Because it's easier to land hits, yeah.
Exactly. That's part of the problem. Now, let's start out with the circle on the auto gimbals, way too large. That circle needs to train a player to become a fixed and gimbal pilot,
right? It was supposed to be like, but it can be this big. It can be this big. I don't even break a sweat flying anymore. I just fly and I just...
Right?
I can be sipping coffee and kill people.
It can be this big, but this was something I mentioned on the stream when Darsh, when we were watching the video, was if it's this big, why doesn't it become like almost like an archery target, right? Where you miss 90% of your shots on the very edge, and as you get closer, you start to hit more and more. It actually trains you to be a fixed or a gimbaled pilot. That's how I feel that it should be, personally, and maybe some HUD UI that represents that.
That's what I thought it was supposed to be.
It's clearly not. Right?
Of course not. But even when around the verse, when they started talking about it, there was this big circle, and he goes, "Oh, don't worry, this is going to get. I don't know. It's going to sound really bad, but he looks like Mr. Miyagi. I don't know who he is."
Kirk Tomei.
Okay, thank you.
Well, he's got the beard. It's the beard. Yeah.
Okay, but he showed us this thing, and the chat flipped out, and even on live stream, the people were freaking out, and he's like, "No, don't worry about it. It's going to be super tiny," but it didn't. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The emotes come out.
Like I said, but that's all balanced. That's not implementing a system or ignoring it. You can have the same auto gimbal system, but just make the circle smaller or make it behave in a different way. So, like Mike said, maybe just make it smaller and have that be as a trading tool to make people more in line with just
Okay. So what
fixed
they've been,
or regular
let
gimbals.
me say, instead of saying flight model, let's say balance, right? So we'll replace the word. So 0.9's balance, 1.3 balance, 1.4 balance. 1.4 is kind of weird. It didn't actually exist. But 2.6 and now 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. The balance in all of that has been going away from basically what we consider as being a good flight model to being something that isn't fun anymore. And I know that's like, well, define fun and
Exactly.
who and how many. But the thing is, the problem is that it's been going away from the one, like I said, one of the main components of the game is supposed to be space combat. And I know that's, again, sounds entitlement because everyone's like, oh, well, that's all I want to do is
that
run
doesn't
cargo.
sound entitled at all. That is,
you're gonna
that's
need
a true
combat.
statement.
You're going to need combat to escort, because if you can go to and from places and not worry about anything in your Caterpillar and not have to have escorts and all the other stuff and bounty hunting and all of the other gameplay that's there, then you might as well just turn it into My Little Pony World.
Have you tried looking at what you liked so much in 1.3 and pinpointing exactly what it was?
Lateral thrust, the ability to dodge. That was one of them. And that also gave me positional ability to get over a target, keep aim while flying around. And it allowed me to avoid missiles, avoid fire, spin around, and engage from behind. All kinds of very skillful things. That was, if I could get lateral thrust, more lateral thrust would give me less circle strafing. It got rid of so many things, because circle strafing is just because people get up to a particular speed and then they're locked in that speed and they can't get out of it because one guy's shooting, and if you try to deviate, you'll just get shot and you won't be returning DPS and you get blown up. So circle strafing wasn't a thing when we had lateral thrust. And then the whole thing was, well, the spaceship doesn't look right because a Hornet's got this big thing on the back and we've got all this little shitty thrusters, and it doesn't make sense that the ship would be able to go at this speed sideways with those teeny little thrusters. So I would prefer them bring all the thruster values up and take the stupid thing off the back and just say, space, be real, have at it. Now you have lateral thrust, because that was actually why 1.3 was good.
But that goes completely against the whole original premise of it being World War II fighting in space.
No, because World War II is all about getting positional ability on your target.
But it was never using lateral thrust or vertical thrust.
But I use lateral thrust to fly like a plane. That's the thing. I'm always bank and roll, just like a plane. So yes,
okay.
I disagree with your thing. I need the ability to have
but by lateral thrust you mean strafing
lateral thrust is this.
That's what I would assume.
But it's not just lateral. It's all like lateral thrust in any direction is lateral thrust.
Oh,
it's
so you
not
mean
just left and right,
translating?
ladies.
You mean translating?
But that's lateral thrust. Lateral. There's no up in space, right?
That's what I was confused.
That's not lateral.
Yeah. When you said lateral, I assumed that you meant like being able
rotational.
Being able to press thrust. Gotcha. I thought you meant being able to press A and, yeah.
Sure.
Because I thought you meant straight, like being able to hit A and D.
Sorry, I'm stupid. I only had grade 10.
No, it's okay. We don't mean that.
No, but no, we just have to agree on what you mean. Like,
yeah,
like you have rotational movement and you have translational movement in any direction, but lateral just means left and right.
So that's strafe left and right. That's what I thought you meant as well.
Or it's also up and down. It's basically whatever 90 degrees on
change the angle of the ship.
On direct. Yeah, that is translational. Yeah, sure. But that just also goes back to what we were talking about. Just boost the thrusters and have 100% thrusters be super powerful. And then if you want to be to be slightly more gentle, you just bar it down.
One component. The second component was the rate of change. When you used to boost in those lower patches, it would magnify the performance of your throttle, of your thrusters.
Yes.
Instead of drifting like this, you would be able to almost
Or
carve
even,
like a ski, right? And that level of precision was your obstacle avoidance that got you in and out of asteroids, that got you in and around garbage. You can go watch some footage, people basically dodging around the space station and then coming out in the correct attitude and shooting like this. Again, I'm not trying to make it a PvP nightmare for people, okay? I'm trying to find a balance between stuff. And no, you can't still do that because it's fucking not the same rate.
Stop reading Twitch chat. Ignore them. It's a podcast.
You know what I mean, right?
So yeah, before boost was about 2.5 times thrust of normal thrusters. Right now, it's only about 50% more, I think, or 75% more. But it's all just more noticeable when you have, because they gimped the thrusters and they make them feel.
That's the biggest change,
correct?
More
heavier.
Was gimping the maneuvering thrusters and boosting your main thrusters. That was the biggest change.
To make it more in line with how the ships looked, because you had this little teeny tiny maneuvering thrusters on the side and a big chonker on the back. Yeah.
Now, what if I made this point, both Noob and Darsh, between 0.9 and 2.6, or even a little earlier, let's say 2.0, the people who bought into the MMO I felt like they weren't developing for us and we were ignored, right? And they do seem, it does seem to be shifting in our direction, and it does also seem that there's a limit of resources that can be used. I don't know if David Coulson is the only guy that could work on these things, and I don't know, and I'm gonna sound like that Star Citizen White Knight, and I don't know how any other way to say it without sounding like that. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, is that there's a limited number of resources and there's only so many people that can be working on these things at any given time, right? And what if there's been a shift in the focus of what became important to them, but that doesn't mean that your thing, whether it's Darjanator running some cargo, me mining, or your ship combat. And I see you smiling. I'm just saying, what if? I'm not saying that's
42.
what's happened. Yeah,
Squadron 42 is the focus.
I know where you're at.
And that's the fucking flight model.
Yeah, and if Squadron 42 is the focus, it has to be good. Space combat has to be good. But yeah, I don't know. But what if that, like, for right now, like, here's the whole thing.
But that was my fear.
This is and your fear should be, and this is one of those things that I'm gonna sound like the guy with the cork board and the red lines pointing to all the things of what's going on here. What if they need to make money, dude?
Oh no, they have to make money. That's
all right.
fine.
So, and how they make money is by but the game has to be fun for hold on. The game's got to be fun for everybody. And the guess what? Arena Commander was not fun. It was not fun for 90%
model.
Yeah. Arena Commander was not fun for 90% of the people that played that game. Arena Commander was fun for people in RS and for people in your org and a handful of other people. It was not fun. I occasionally had fun in it, but I also just got my head punched against the wall because I wasn't as good as everyone else.
Whether that I think that's okay, so that's not irrelevant, but it's irrelevant from the perspective of that was intended to be the baseline of where everything went,
and it got balanced from there.
My fear is that they've wasted 7 years and they still don't have a viable flight mechanic that is good. That's the underlying fear,
and that fear is real. And I imagine Darsh would have to agree with that, right?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah. It should be approachable and feeling good from the perspective of everybody.
It should have already been as well, probably a couple years ago. It wasn't.
But it wasn't. And we don't know this, but
it absolutely wasn't.
we didn't notice, but what if Coulson just had to go and rewrite everything from scratch because, shit broke all the time?
Yeah.
And now that they have a good foundation for it, maybe they just need to dial it in to bring it back to what it was. Yeah, hopefully.
Perfect timing for the video then, because I tried to illustrate all of the things that were good.
You know what?
And hopefully, I have faith, man. If I didn't have faith, I would have been playing DCS by now.
I'm gonna go to CitizenCon. I'm gonna kidnap David Coulson and I'm gonna ask him all these questions. Put a hood over his head and then
I'm gonna send you a picture of my face and you wear a Nuba mask.
Right. And I'm gonna put a flashlight in his face. I'm gonna ask him all these questions and
Yeah, it's because, and you know what? When you meet the guys at CitizenCon, they're usually a lot more open to sharing information with you. And it would be curious because we hear that that we are still paying attention to the flight model. They keep saying that, right? Like Noob, I'm sure you've heard it. But it's where is it? Where's the work coming from? When are we going to see it? Because Noob, the flight model was not good for the entire game as a whole. You argued right away. It was an MMO. It's an open world game. It's a sandbox. There's cargo ships. There's not. When I hit the strafe down button to land in any ship that like near a planet, the thrusters were too strong, and we did not have that thruster input. We do now, but I would also argue that having 3 inputs, it's a little bit difficult to do on a mouse and keyboard, right? I don't have too many issues with a throttle, but when you're lowering your, it's a little bit like from a barrier to entry perspective. Like, all right, I got to lower my maneuvering thruster power down, but now I'm near gravity, so I'm just falling. So what's happening? And then I have to lower my speed limiter, like the whole speed limiter thing.
It's still a pain in the ass.
Is
what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a little weird, but the question is
the space limiter is also kind of broken right now because they admitted it. Coulson admitted it, and you can still do it. There is ways to go faster than the speed limiter if you're just strafing and accelerating and turning at the same time. Yeah, so that's still broken. So
it's not helping my happiness.
No, and maybe you're not going to be happy until mid next year or something.
And that's
right?
And I'm good for that because I've already been waiting like 6 years. So, just fire it a lot. But again, the concern of the video was if it is just balance, let's figure out what was good and try to get there a little bit. I'm not asking for ships that can fucking flip upside down and bugger off killing the pilot. I'm looking for a balance between what we had and what was good about it and what we currently have. I want a reason to play Star Citizen.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I won't play cargo and all the other stuff, but it's just like you, Darj, if you choose to never do combat, that's fine. And if I choose to never do cargo, that's fine. But I should still be able to run escort for you and have fun. That's the thing.
And you make the biggest point here, Noob, is that Darj can't choose to never to never do combat, because that's the whole point of the game as being an MMO, being open world. You remember, we all hear about they're going to remove things like armistice zones, right? Like the idea of never being in combat, that's not a reality. You're always there's always going to be the risk of combat. And coming from somebody who wants to only be really like a miner or cargo hauler or that salvager, that kind of gameplay, that's what I'm interested in. I'm still very focused on the fact that combat needs to be really good, and there needs to be risk and reward on all sides of the elements. And if guys don't want to do ship combat because it's boring, like Noob, that's bad, right? But but at the same time, one of the arguments that Noob makes to make it more interesting is to boost the maneuvering thrusters, right? But that makes flying, as far as like combat ships landing near surfaces, things like that, it does make it a lot more difficult. And I think one of the first steps to getting there is exactly what we have. And this is kind of where I wanted to go, and this is why I wanted to bring you two together, is to make this kind of final point, and we can keep going for a few more minutes because we got about 5 more minutes before I want to go to callers. Is that if you get the current the hover mode thing that they're putting in, what is it called?
Proximity
assist. So this is the first step to proximity assist. The next step is to make sure that we can't be like this pointed down.
Some ships should be able to.
Maybe, but let me get to
R2L should be able to.
Probably. But let me get through this first before we go. Is being able to when you're near the surface have this proximity assist be active is where you get that balance between what Noob wants and what Darj wants, right? When you get near a surface, everything smooths out. Your maneuvering thrusters don't need to have as much power. But when you're in space combat, you can kind of get what Noobifier wants. And maybe that's the direction that David Coulson is going, and maybe that's where we are going, and maybe that's why something like proximity assist / hover mode was the priority first, and then we move into getting back to where Noobifier was. Maybe that's it, but again, that's pure speculation on my part. But that's my kind of thought process with the whole thing.
And hover mode was just an exploration of what we should do to make atmospheric flight not more fun, but easier to handle, because they like they said, they completely redid Squadron 42 when they realized we're gonna have planets in it. So now they have to also have you have to have a gradient of maneuverability to handle both space flight and atmospheric flight. You remember that short approach, the slow approach in the Squadron 42 vertical slice? You really couldn't do that as delicately as it was shown without maybe thruster control, but also you need some way of making the ship less twitchy when you are surrounded by so much potential death.
Precision.
So
it was precision mode at the time. Like that was in, for the vertical slice, they had precision mode, and you can actually switch to it.
Yeah.
So that brings you to 50%. So your 100% of your joystick becomes 50 meters per second. Anyways, that precision has been added in the form of the adjustment for the output. So we still have it. It's just called something else. And you're right, it is good. I'm not saying that all of that stuff isn't good. It's just that the ship is still too slow. Sorry.
At its maximum, you mean?
It needs to be able to. I'm fine with the Caterpillar being able to have enough power to land fully loaded on most surfaces. And as fighter, you should have to come in. If I'm coming into land on a planet, I should be running at 30% thrust, because the ship is supposed to be agile and quick and deadly, right?
Define fast, though. Ship. What do you mean by fast?
So not fast as in agile, not fast as in like
actual speed. Quick instead of fast, right?
Right.
Or whatever.
I don't want to come in at Mach chicken. I don't need that, right? But it has to be agile. The whole point of the ship is that it's agile. Fighters, by their nature, are your 9.9 Gs is like the limit of the pilot, and that's exactly where most fighters go to, because it's at the limit of the operator.
Yeah.
Right.
But right now we also have we already have up to 15 G in some ships.
Which is, I mean, we could do that because it's future. Maybe there's some future thing.
Again, we have to find it's too slow.
I'm looking for a balance. That's it. All I want is a refactor. I need to be closer to where we were without. I'm not asking for a ship that can do 85 Gs. I don't want to be red mist. That's not the point. I don't need it to be a completely dominating effect where only the pilots are going to win. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for an MMO where you have tanks, you have your swords, and you have your mages, and you have your cargo packs. It has to be appealing for everyone. And certainly with Squadron 42 coming out, being a combat-focused game where you're a soldier flying a spaceship killing things, it just blows my mind that we're going towards.
It's hard to envision that in the state that we are in the game right now. It's hard to envision that being fun. And I agree with Noob on that perspective. what I can envision is that with a few tweaks, the MMO will be fun. I'm not sure about strictly combat related stuff would be fun enough. So quickly, like 30 seconds each if you want, like your final thoughts on your stuff, and then we'll get to some callers and we'll kind of go back and forth with them a little bit and hear what they have to say. Start with Darsh.
I think I've said everything I wanted to.
Okay.
Noob actually kind of pushed me towards his side of the argument that that fighter ships could do with more thrust if the pilots desired to, but now that we have the throttle power, we are just the other side has the ability to not pancake against the ground every time they want to land somewhere. So yeah, if it is just a question of finding the right balance, then we should make CIG listen to every side of the argument, but maybe try to sound less entitled.
I think, and Noob, I don't think your video sounded incredibly entitled, but I know for the I don't think it sounded very entitled at all. They're just small moments
hostile,
of it,
right?
Yes, and that's the problem. And I know, like, the RS guys, those are some of the best pilots I've ever seen in my life. They are so talented. I'm in awe of them. So I'm not trying to put them down, but the way they go about
they've changed.
Speaking,
that was personalities within the org.
The
right
way they
now,
went, I shouldn't say the way they go.
Yeah.
The way they went about things created
they're totally
this
chill now.
Yeah, created this like really negative opinion of them, right? And if I was Chris Roberts or if I was David Coulson, in a lot of situations, I'd probably be like,
game breaking.
Fuck off. Yeah,
right? That's game breaking.
I'm not going to listen to you.
It's the opposite. It's just a troll org or whatever people thought of it, but they're not there anymore. They've had a couple of not upsets, but changes in the hierarchy, and I'm hanging out there more than I hang out in my own org now. And they're totally chill. They used to absolutely hate everything I stood for as a person is trying to bring combat to the masses, because that's what I'm actually trying to do, right? I'm not trying to compartmentalize it and make it like me and them. I want everybody to have fun. That's the underlying point. And that was really the intent of the video, was just to kind of highlight why I think AC was fun. And it was a personal thing. And I got shit for calling it no bullshit because it's your opinion, but people don't understand that no bullshit is just a method of delivery. It has nothing to do with the content. Yeah. So whatever. Anyways, again, I think I feel like I've said my piece, and I think everyone understands the point of what I was trying to achieve, hopefully. And I think we should go to callers.
I agree.
That would be fun.
I agree. And I think we've kind of come to like a middle ground for all of us in some way of what might be good. So, all right, let's bring our first caller in. All right, so our first caller is Bellatar, and hopefully the overlay updated with a little on the line, so we at least know who's with us today. Hey, Bellatar, how you doing?
Hi, all.
Hello.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. So, what do you think about our little discussion here?
I actually think that both points, both angles are super valid.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Noob in the sense of that the high skill ceiling in PvP combat needs to be a thing. So if you're lowering the skill ceiling to address unexperienced or unwanting pilots, then that's not a good approach. But I'm totally on board with Darjanator as well, in the sense of I want this game to feel physically as real as possible given the circumstances.
Yeah.
And to me, the only question is how do you combine those 2 points? How do you manage to achieve them both in an acceptable way? And I think there is a way to do that, because my starting point for this would be that you just keep the physical laws or the constants that you have, that I don't know what G-force is, inertia needs to be a thing, you need to have drag and atmosphere and all that stuff. And in the current model, I think there's only one component or aspect missing to combine keeping those basic laws governing physics and this flight model that Noob is enjoying for PvP combat. Because if you don't add an additional systems, you're always going to end up in the situation, either you're going to cheat on physics because you allow people to pull 50G maneuvers, or it's going to be slow and sluggish because the human body can only stomach 10G, and that's not about to change in the future. It's only going to get worse if you look at evolution. And I think that the actual obvious solution to this, as kind of hand wavium tech, is already in the game, because what you need to do for that is at least a temporary way to eliminate or to limit G forces while still having massive acceleration. And if you look at quantum travel, this is exactly what a quantum drive already achieves, because if you would be subject to regular G forces at those accelerations, you would be just squished to pulp in your spaceship, because you go to fractions of the speed of light in mere seconds, which are incredible G forces, but the quantum drive is already designed after a theoretical concept that just nullifies that. So your quantum drive is already working as a counter to G force in acceleration situations. And so an idea.
Sorry. No, please keep going. I thought that was the end. I'm very rude.
It wasn't the end. I'm sorry. Not yet. So that you add into your flight model, which you should keep as realistic as possible with all the drag and all the inertia and all the drift, and mass needs to be a thing. You add this component that you can, like thrusters, temporarily activate during dogfights. If you're trying to pull a high G maneuver or do one of those crazy stunts to get into position, that you can manually activate for a short period of time. Your quantum drive has assistance to oppose those G forces for a second. But you counter that and you balance that with an enormous energy consumption so that you can do this only for a very short period of time. So that would be a theoretical approach to trying to balance out having your laws of physics. You do have a little bit of hand wavium theory in there with your quantum drive. And you can still have you then have a system in place that enables you to balance those flight maneuvers via something that is in game, and you don't need to cheat on gravity or biology. So what you of course need to do as well is you can then look at your theoretical output of thrusters. You can look at the thruster design of your ships, because CIG did not do themselves a favor with designing 2949 spaceships in the form of 21st century atmospheric fighters, because that led to those strange thruster setups where those tiny thrusters need to put out ridiculous amounts of thrust. So you need to look at that as well, but that is something that can just be fixed rather easily by design, by just making those a bit bigger. And that is all around, I think, an approach where you introduce one additional, or you use a system you already have in the game to balance out this fact that you can go for as realistic as possible flight model in space and atmosphere, and at the same time enable fun dogfighting, and then it becomes a mere balancing issue instead of a systemic one.
I don't know. I think it complicates
two things.
Go ahead.
So on this hand wavian thing, I agree 100%. Someone once asked, if you have an Idris like this, and it's stationary, and it does this, the guy on the end here is going to receive leg-crushing inertia. The guy in the middle is going to experience none. And the guy over here is going to end up on the ceiling dead. And they said, don't worry about it. So that's already built into the game. And And 1,000 years in the future, who's to say that a thruster on a saber can't be capable of holding 10 Gs, right? It doesn't. So again, I don't think we need to change the physical look of the fighter. We just need
I
to
agree, yeah.
all understand that the thruster can be that strong. It could be ion driver, whatever, nuclear tipped, whatever, something.
They're Vasimer thrusters, as per official explanation, which currently in the 21st century they are able to produce a couple of newtons of thrust, but what we have right now in game is in terms of meganewtons.
Perfect.
There is one thing. If you read about a bunch of lore, there are several actual official references to, I don't know what it's called in Star System, but basically the inertial dampeners from Star Trek.
Yep,
So
that's basically what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Hand waving.
Yeah,
Which
the
is
hand waving
because we
stuff.
have physics grids and that's how things work. So now we need to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They exist, but who's to say that they won't also become a component that you can swap out and upgrade? So eventually, you will have, same ship that has a super beefed up inertial dampener that is able to then perform much more intense maneuvers without the pilot or the occupants blacking out. But we don't have that yet. Yes, exactly.
Well, I think the point I was trying to make is that you actually have the technology theoretically already in game with that quantum drive.
Don't you think that complicates things
they
a
are
little?
acting like inertial dampeners. You just have to apply them to normal flight and space combat that you can temporarily activate this and maybe upgrade it so
It's all
that
just
it
lore.
works that way in normal flight.
Yeah. I think that
So don't even
complicates
complain.
things a little bit, though.
Well, it does, of course, because you're introducing an additional variable. But I think it for the cost of this complication, you get rid of this opposition of physics versus fun PvP combat flight, and I think that's worth it because you have a component that you can sell in lore with a reasonable logic, and then just use to balance out the game in a way so that you can provide a really high skill ceiling, which needs to be a thing in my opinion, because if new players or players who just don't want to become good pilots struggle, then I think it would be a bad idea to cap off the skill ceiling. But there will be zones of different consequence in the law systems, for instance. So for beginning players, they should always start in zones where the consequence of ganking players by experienced pilots is so high that they won't even think about it, so they can hone their skills and become more competent pilots. And I don't believe you should achieve that by just lowering the skill ceiling, because then everyone would be at a similar level, because you can't get higher because of all the automation, and it becomes boring in regard to flight very, very quickly. So I don't think that should be a thing, that you should leave the high skill ceiling and look at ways to somehow protect and enable newer players to become better or to avoid consequences.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, and we'll probably leave it there for Bellatar because we need to get a few other people in before we go. So he kind of made his point. But as I'm bringing in the next person, feel free to respond. But I'll have.
And
to
I
move
bet that in a couple of years, that's going to be the new technological development. You know, you have micro quantum bursts to help you in SCM combat or SCM maneuvering. That's going to be the new thing by RSI or something like that.
Maybe, or maybe we just go back to a similar system and you get your proximity assist, like I was mentioning before, and you get your smoothness where you need it, and you get your boosting where you don't. Right. So we'll. Yep. I don't know, but again, like with the Vasimer thrusters, like you said, it doesn't seem like they should be able to put out that kind of thrust.
They don't these days, but you
it's
know,
1,000 years in the future.
It is 930 years in the future, and at the very start of space travel with liquid rockets, we barely got a little this little thing off the ground, and now we're sending cars into space. So
exactly, yeah. So we'll see. But all right, let's bring in our next caller, which I have my nerves about. For those of you guys that follow Twitch chat, you probably do know Sergeant Jockitch or Captain Jockitch. He is not the most loving of Star Citizen, so we'll see how this one goes.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, welcome, Captain Jockitch. So, what are your thoughts on our discussion and everything, and what do you got to say? You got the floor.
Oh, hey, you guys hear me?
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Oh, hey. So, first off, the three of you guys, I like all three of you.
I like
Don't
you too.
assume that Okay, so obviously, I have not played Star Citizen in almost years.
Mhm.
And part of that is because of the flight model.
Yeah.
The last time I played was with Nuba Fire. And I remember we would be in TeamSpeak arguing about not arguing, but discussing the flight model and how bad it was. If I would have told him 2 years or 3 years later that the flight model was still bad, he probably would have said I was.
Yeah.
But,
I think we all
But
would
here
have.
we are.
Yeah.
And here we are. I mean, I think part of the problem is quantity over quality. CIG doesn't focus on one mechanic to make it. They prefer to have a bunch of mechanics that don't work. That's just how they do things.
Yeah. Hey, Jockitch, real quick before you keep going, are you using push to talk?
No.
Just adjust your voice activation a little bit lower, so because it's cutting you off a little bit.
Okay, you guys hear me now?
Yeah. We hear you okay. It's just
Okay.
cutting you off at the end and the beginning sometimes.
Yeah,
I want to make sure
probably.
your points get heard.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with the auto aim or any of these other. I just want a flight model that I can play without having issues.
Yeah.
It's the problem back in the day was that they would change it patch.
Yeah, that was
And-
frustrating.
That was frustrating for people that wanted to learn how to play the game. It would just change every patch. Things would get worse. And we thought we were only a few patches away from getting the ultimate flight model. And that
Yeah.
never happened. They just moved on. I don't think anybody knows how to fix it. I just it's you look at games like Elite Dangerous and other games that use flight, and they've only used one flight model the entire time from development to the game right now. And then Star Citizen, we're going on our 10th?
No, 7.
7.
Still, it doesn't matter at that point.
I know, it still sounds horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and we bash games like Elite Dangerous, oh, it's flight model. Well, they've only had one flight model. People learn it.
Jockitch, I would love for you to load in 3.7.1 and fly, make a good effort to see what's going on.
Well,
And I would love you to take down some notes and send them to me, because I never had that 1 or 2 year period where I'm not playing. So your opinion?
well, I did.
Okay.
I didn't jump into 3.7, but I jumped into 3.7 or 3.6. I think it was
Okay.
either 3.6 or 3.5.
Yeah, right after a refactor.
And it was a lot different than what I remember. It was not good. I played about 30 minutes and I'm done. I don't want to put in the effort to learn this flight model. And it's not just me.
No,
Does
I know.
anybody see anybody playing from Renegade Squadron anymore?
No.
There's 3. I know there's 3 still playing.
3 out of like 70 players.
Right.
And they used to play thousands of hours.
Anytime you got into an arena commander match, there was an RS person.
Yes. I
But
mean,
it's also because the direction is shifted away from a combat-focused development into focusing on these planetary surfaces.
Right.
Yeah,
But go read the comments in the video and I'm not saying this like, oh, good job, Noobifier, you found the pulse of the community. That's not what I'm saying. But if anyone thinks that it's not a thing and that we're in a good state where like everyone's happy, that itself is not possible. You can have to go read.
No one on this
it's
panel
not-
and no one
No.
should agree with that.
No,
and
no,
I'm
no,
assuming
it's-
we're all on the same
Everybody's
page.
happy. No.
We are
Yeah.
not in a good. We're nowhere near there yet.
No.
And we do not have the pulse of the community where everyone's super happy and it's just me venting. It's not that. And
Well, and we don't know what the community wants because there's like 1 million players that don't play the game. They
Yeah.
have not opened up the game to see what's going on. I have 3 friends that have the game but don't play. They don't know what it's. The few players that are playing now, they enjoy the stuff. But you know, the biggest games out right now are combat games, Fortnite, PUBG. You know, they all have combat. The first video that we seen for Star Citizen was Super Hornet flying into a Bengal, fighting a bunch of shit. That's what drove us to get in. It wasn't delivering packages.
Wing Commander 2.0.
Yeah. I mean, I think we forget every ship has a gun. Every ship.
Yeah.
The Dragonfly has a gun. So why wouldn't
But what
Flight and
combat focused players forget is that what pushed the funding, what pushed the excitement, what pushed the eyes on Star Citizen. It wasn't the flight combat. It wasn't any of that. It was procedural planets. That's what pushed the game forward. It was in a stalemate for a long time, and then they pushed out these procedural planets. I'm not saying that that was the right thing to do, okay? I'm not saying that I think that actually helped the game. In a way, I think that hurt the game a lot, and I think it hurt the players like you, Jokic, and the players like you, Noob, a lot, because the focus shifted to, whoa, shit, we're all over
you
Reddit.
can have both.
Everybody's paying attention to us. You should be able to have both.
We
we
have to
haven't-
have both. That's it.
Yeah.
We have to. Yes, 100%. We have to.
It wasn't.
Why
Mike,
we
it
don't,
wasn't
I don't
just
know.
the planets. It wasn't just the planets. It was the promise of being whatever you wanted to be in space. And whenever they had the polls for which ship should we concept next,
Combat was
almost
never
every
in
time
there.
it was, but it never won.
Yeah.
Almost never won.
Right, but
so
we already have
people
50
wanted non-combat ships
Yeah.
But we have 50 combat ships, which is why
because they started with combat first, and then they just
and
developed
people
it,
were
and now
tired
they're
of getting
bringing
dunked
non-combat
on.
stuff in.
Yeah, and people were tired of getting dunked on in Arena Commander. They wanted to experience what excited them about the game. Well, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Noob. We gotta have both. And in order to have both, I think Darj, I think Jokic, you would agree, we have to get back to the flight model in space first. We gotta start there. Gotta come back to planets and then build out. But obviously, at the same time, we have to continue scaling the game, right? Server-side OCS, planets, all that stuff. We have to get back to basics.
I am so fine with having a flight model that behaves in space, and then for whatever hand wavium, that the Saber can't hover facing down shooting stuff. I don't care. But it should.
It should
but
be
it
able to,
doesn't
but you
have
better
to.
be really. It better require
This
a ton of
is-
skill to be able to do it.
Because other people need to have fun too. And I totally get that. But in space, where the space fighter is designed to fight in space, it should be able to fight in space. Okay? That's it. And
Yeah.
then we have other things on the ground that counteract. I think the whole point of hover mode was to make it so that a Saber couldn't become a turret in space. And that's important.
Yes.
Can I make
But
one
I
more
think
point?
it should.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Jokic.
Uh,
and then we'll switch.
everybody in this stream and everybody in the chat is 100%. I mean, we forget that Star Citizen Chris Roberts said yes to everything.
Yeah.
He said yes to every mechanic. If somebody asked the question, "Hey, are we gonna have pets?" Yes. Are we gonna have Star Citizen? Yes. We're gonna have everything you want. So nobody here is, but I think to have it's not too big of a stretch to have somebody working on the flight mechanic while they do everything else. I mean, put two people on the flight mechanic. I think we would have had it done 4 patches. I just can't see why we have to have so many mechanics don't work, if none of them work, I mean, what's
because you have 500 people and everybody's working on their own thing and they're slowly getting it there. You can't have 500 people working on the flight model first and then 500 people working on the planets and then 500 people working
No.
on the
I don't
mining.
think
said
he's
two.
arguing that. He's just asking
He
for a
said
couple.
he
still
wanted two
two.
people.
Two people wouldn't have changed much because
Oh, we don't
Get
know
5
that.
people.
I mean,
I'm
I
gonna
think
say
Darsh, you
I'm
would
gonna say
agree that
BS to your argument.
yeah, and I'll say it better instead of saying BS. I think you definitely agreed just a second ago that that the flight model's a core focus and should be a core focus, right? And if it is, then they should prioritize more people working on it than there are currently. And I think that's Noob's argument. I think that's Jockey's argument. I think it's mine too.
Yep. Also, currently the flight model went too much away from combat towards
Whatever it is.
to whatever it is to where I prefer it.
Yeah.
But now we have to go. Have the pendulum swing back the other direction and find somewhere
Charge.
where a good middle is.
What ships do you fly?
All right. 315, Avenger, Saber Raven, Valkyrie, Constellation.
A lot of combat focus in there.
A lot of combat ships. So you like the flight model in those. What do you think about cargo ships like a Caterpillar and those types of things?
Still don't think they feel heavy enough because just 2 days ago I saw Twerk just hovering above our corp like a turret.
Yeah.
So balance, like you said, balance.
Yeah,
Perfect.
balance.
Yeah. All right, Jokic, I'm going to let you go and get to the next caller, which should be pretty interesting
thanks.
as is very racing focused. Thank you for your points, as always. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
No problem. Thanks for being on. All right, so our next caller is actually a racing focused guy. His name's Rumgid. He runs, or is at least a very big part of a racing focused Discord. So let me bring him in here. Rumgid, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. Turn yourself up a little bit. I'm going to turn you up as well. You're really low. Or get closer to your mic.
All right, it's at 100% now, so I can't really turn it up a whole lot.
All right, I got you at 200% in Discord, so I'll do my best to balance it.
So yes, I am one of the rare breeds that actually still does racing to this shiny day. So we're not completely extinct, Nuba Fire.
But you'll agree that you were nowhere to where you were.
Oh, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of people that are there, we are definitely fewer. But I also think that the incentive to do it
hasn't
is
changed
not there anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Earning rec,
they've
what's
removed.
right?
Yeah, like
What's the point?
earning rec right now is pointless. Because you can do it elsewhere, but doing that elsewhere actually gives you a lot more options. If you rent stuff with rec, you cannot customize your ships, which is mandatory in both combat and in racing, because weapons and hopefully soon other components has weight to it, which reduces your mass.
The racing components should be less durable, maybe, but also have less mass.
I personally, I don't care for game balance and that sort of deal. It'll come, and hopefully someday it's gonna be fine. And I currently the flight model feels fine, just going from A to B. And I enjoy. And racing wise, the change that they've done has not made it easier. They made it a lot harder. And again, while removing incentive to play, they're also making it harder at the same time. At least, again, from my perspective as a racer. Now, in the PU, flying around both big ships, and I would agree with you there, George, that the bigger ships should have more weight to it. I was flying around the 890 earlier today, and it was stopping pretty quick in atmosphere. I was like, damn. This kind of feels like my M50. And then also you as you were saying, like some of the ships go up to 15 Gs. I can get the M50 up to 25.6 Gs right now over long durations of time. So yes, we might not have the 50 Gs that we had before, but we can still do some insane amount of Gs. And while the discussion there about realism, like the world record is, I think, 46 point something Gs. Admittedly, it's only for a few seconds, but it's pretty high where the average body can maybe tolerate 6 or 7. But so I don't think the crazy high Gs is that big of an effect there. So I'm gonna agree with Noobifier and say you can have fun as a transport pilot because you're just gonna max out your speed and go from one place to another, but that is not fun as someone who likes combat and just circling around each other and then going out for tea, and then you'll come back and then you're still circling each other.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you guys have anything to add to that? I'm
just gonna say on the G-force thing, it is 1,000 years in the future, and we've all seen on even TV shows like The Expanse that Chris Roberts was trying to model how some flight was behaving. They have built into their lore that there's a system that injects you with something that allows you to tolerate for short periods of time, and then you're done. You're done. You can't do it again because your body's oversaturated with the stuff. Again, I'm not saying to make it unrealistic. I'm just saying that we can find a balance. We need to be able to find somewhere between 50 Gs and 0, right? Like,
and we need to find a balance between way too powerful maneuvering thrusters versus fun.
But you can cut way too power down by putting limits like boost fuel, by putting G blackout. But like there are mechanisms that will, just like we have Port Olisar with an armistice zone now, soon we're going to be transitioning to law. You can take out your gun and blow someone away, but why would you, right? Because you know you're just going to get blown up. It's the same same thing. I could turn my ship up to 1,000% and become red goo, but why would I do that? Right?
Yeah, and I think that's what their idea was when hearing from Todd Pappy on like SCL maybe 2 months ago, where he's like, we are focused on the combat flight model and we are looking at creating penalties for going too fast.
One thing, Noob, this may be a bit of a longer question and answer. What about jerk?
Jerk will kill you.
Yeah. Do you think that possibly one of the reasons why the whole feeling of fun is gone is because they introduced far less jerk? Because in the beginning, it was as soon as you
there was no acceleration.
got on the throttle. There's no ramp up in acceleration. It's instant acceleration. Which basically kills you. And now they went to a second level of motion, or is it a third, and smooth that out. So the acceleration ramps up, and so it seems more sluggish that way.
So I will answer very quickly. With regards to jerk, if I have my thruster set to, let's say, 100%, and I push, I should nearly black out. I should, remember in Arena Commander, your screen used to go just black, and you'd get so used to it, you could fight on the very edge, and especially within racing, we would use that. We would hold Twerk. You used to race a lot. You'd get on that ragged edge where the screen just goes like this, and you can hear your player go like he's about to die, and you would just hold it at that edge limit. That's skillful, and that's so rewarding. I'm not even going to say fun. So jerk will kill you, but jerk, the ship should be able to jerk. You should have to fight it. You should have to balance it yourself. I'm not saying I want CIG to reduce the capability of the ship. Let me worry about it, I guess.
Because that is something I bring up, because one of the screenshots that you put in your video is the acceleration curves that they talked about also not only smoothing them out, but also introducing noise to them, just because with with thruster degradation and stuff like that. So maybe that's the reason. If you get the same sort of speeds and you get the same sort of lateral acceleration, but it's because the acceleration of acceleration is smoothed out, that introduces a sort of feeling of sluggishness that you don't perceive as fun. So is that something that you would want adjusted? Maybe something that you would like to change yourself in the game by installing the other thrusters, maybe?
So I think honestly, what you
Is
bring
that
up
too complicated?
No, but I mean, I'm going to use racing again because racing has the focus of the majority of maximum acceleration, right? Because that's the whole point of racing, getting from point A to point B through obstacles with skill.
Which should train you for flight combat.
And it used to.
Yes.
Because if you could do this in a race to get through rings, you could see an asteroid and say, well, I can do that around the asteroid. And I used to use asteroids. We used to use asteroids for cover while maintaining angle. Everything was like very, very snappy and very jerky. But the fact that I can't jerk, right? We used to be able to get on that ragged edge, and now the ships won't even remotely come close to a place where you will black out. I guess is what I'm saying. Like you can't even turn G limit off and achieve a hard blackout unless you physically go through the process of trying to induce it. So
it takes several seconds, definitely.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you should be able to. That's part of what was missing. Is you should be able to be skillful enough to know exactly your player's limit, and it should be consistent enough that you can deal with it, manage it, and use it. And that's what makes you skillful. That's what makes you great. And the new pilot has to learn how to deal with it, I guess. That sounds entitled, but it's not. It's a normal part of gameplay.
There are some aspects of this game where you can't cater to the new player in every situation, right? There has to be
but then you could have lower competitive game modes for racing. You have the Formula 1 and you have the NASCAR.
Yeah, and then you have go-kart racing. It's all yeah. But okay, well, Rum, let me let you go because we actually have one more caller that got brought in late here. So let me drop you off and thank you for calling. And then we'll bring Gorgon the Destroyer in here. So Gorgon, how you doing, man? You'll have to be relatively quick. But where are you at right now as I bring your little?
Just calling over here from the east coast of Canada.
Hey, that's near Noob. I think. I don't know my Canadian geography that well.
I think east and west is the same wherever you go.
No, but I think Noob's near Ottawa, and I'm pretty sure that's in the east.
Yeah, that's fairly east.
Yeah,
not too far from me. But first off, good to see you, Mike. Good to see you, Noob. Nice to meet you.
There you go.
But I'm just gonna go and I'll try to make this as quick as I possibly can. But I'm gonna tell a very short story and make a couple points. But the two things that I kind of want you guys to focus on as far as like discussion goes is one, proportional representation. So we're talking about the silent majority versus the loud minority, etc.
Yeah. And
entitlement.
Okay.
So I got into this game. The first time I played it was patch 2.4. It was a free fly weekend. My buddy brought me over to his place. So we don't have any sticks, mouse. The PU was broken. So we played Arena Commander all weekend. Now, I was obviously a brand new noob here, but after a few hours of practice, I was able to log a couple of kills. So we're talking like, 2-3 a match. Making any wins here, but having at least a good enough time that I'm like, I want to keep trying, right? So a year later, I've been playing, it's patch 2.6. We're getting really close. And they're like, we're making some flight model changes and stuff. And the Buccaneers coming out. It's a light, at this point, I'm thinking, like this has got to be polishing at this point, right? Now it's 2019 and we're still having the same circle strafe conversations that we were back then.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Now, the thing is, though, when we're talking about PvP versus PvE, new guys versus old guys, and all this stuff, you know, jerk versus no jerk, World War II in space versus Sixth Off, the thing that you need to realize is two things. One, this is a PvP game with deep mechanics. Like, in the broadest strokes, flight in and of itself is very deep in the gameplay. There's lots of stuff to go on. You have systems to manage. You know, you have 6 different degrees of movement. You have all these different loadouts. You have all these different spacecraft, blah, 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 blah. And then on top of that, it's also a very niche game. This is a space simulator, for one. It's in early alpha, for two. The buy-in is, you know, if you want to get something that looks like it's actually made to kill people, pretty expensive. So you have all of these things that are playing into the Arena Commander, you know, at the time, sort of culture. So here's another thing, though. If this is a PvP game, and it's an early access game that doesn't have any matchmaking system whatsoever, is it not logical to think you are going to have your ass handed to you when you jump into Battle Royale with a bunch of Renegade Squadron guys who've been there all week, every day, every night, you know?
Sure.
Like, losing is not fun. Losing is inherently not fun, but for some reason, CIG is getting into their heads that, oh, since not everyone is having fun, we're doing something wrong. And that's the wrong kind of perspective, because there were a lot of people that loved space combat. Like me, like Noob, like Templar, like Malagos, like Whitesnake, like, you know, whoever you could name that was once a god, you know, way back when. And, you know, back then, you could actually look at different pilots and be able to tell their skill level just in how they fly. Like, you know, I could jump in and say, okay, I can fight, you know, Red Rum from Angels of the Warp, and we're pretty even set. I can go and fight Eamon Flanagan, and, you know, he's a really tough guy, but I think I might be able to get him sometimes. But I can't touch Tor Matthews because he's an unstoppable god, you know, and you could put people on a pedestal like that. But now it seems like it's so homogenized where everybody is kind of put on the same, you know, you need to know how your shields work, and you need to know what components are good, and you need to have auto gimbal on, and then roll the dice and see what you get. You know, it seems like all of these deeper mechanics have been just laid out just so that everyone has the opportunity to have fun, when in a PvP environment with no matchmaking, that's just not possible at all, regardless of game design.
But are you assuming that that's their intention, was to get to this point? Like, that's the kind of, I don't think that was ever their intention. I think that's the result of the choices that they made, which is still in an ever ongoing, constantly trying to balance game.
I don't think that it's, you know, anyone as far as the devs are concerned, because like I've talked with Coulson and Bayor and all these guys, and, you know, they're all like, yeah, I want, you know, the game to be, you know, hard to a degree. I want it to be skillful and all this stuff. But somebody up there in management, I believe, is saying, no, we need to make this game for everyone so that everybody plays, you know, money snowball kind of thing. Well, but in the end, at the end of the day, if they do balance around this way, no one's going to want to play it for the PvP. And if you don't have a good PvP scene in 2019, you have a dead game. You know, like, you better have like Bethesda level like writing and like an absolute timeless classic from the RPG standpoint, or it's boned straight out of the gate.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. Thing is, I would argue that things are not homogenized because I personally am still shit compared to everybody else.
Yeah, right. Me too.
But,
I still get wrecked.
Like, Darj, I'm not familiar with you as a content creator or anything, but Mike said earlier that you're a cargo pilot.
No, I'm not. Just that's what he like. He's less on the combat side. Like, that's all I know.
Yeah, exactly. So like someone who is not strictly a combat pilot, you know, whether you are like multiple different types of gameplay or a specialist in something else, if you are not absolutely 100% dedicated to combat, why do you feel entitled that you get to have an opinion about the highest levels of combat? You see what I'm saying? People talk about the combat community as being very entitled. Oh, they're pushing their weight around. They want 1.3 back exactly how it was, and they just want their little playpen to go and rip on nerds. No, it's not like that. It's like the people want to be able to dedicate themselves to be able to get to that highest level, because that is the fun. It's the challenge of going up against these other people that are just as dedicated as you. And if you're not as dedicated, you're not going to get there. Sorry. You know, there's other stuff to do. Nobody here, you know what I mean?
Nobody here said that because I didn't like the combat or the flight model where it was purely combat oriented, is that it should go away because I didn't like it. I'm saying that I should also have fun, and I didn't. And it's the flight model that should encompass all aspects of flight in Star Citizen, not just combat.
And we should start from the basis of everybody paid for this game. Whether you did and you free flew the game, you're entitled to an opinion. Right. So we need to come from that place. Maybe not the opinions of the highest level of combat, but in no way was this conversation at any point about the highest levels of combat. It was about the flight model in general and where it was and where it is now. And like, just to be fair, I think that was like a little bit too attacky for my liking at Darsh. And
oh no, sorry, I didn't mean that. Like,
that's how it came off.
But I'm saying from the perspective of people that aren't combat centric. Sorry, I didn't mean to
not him specifically.
Not you, but cargo pilots in general. Let's say.
Okay, but here's the thing about that, and somebody like Darsh and myself who've been around forever, therefore we've seen the way people act in the highest levels of combat. And we did go into this in the early part of the show, earlier in the show, was that those guys were obnoxious and yelled and they were loud and they didn't go about giving feedback in the right way. And they came off entitled.
Well, I'm guilty of that.
Of course. Yeah. And that's part of the problem. And the point of this show is to try to avoid that entitlement and just go with what we thought worked, what we didn't think worked, where do we meet in the middle, and where do we go from here? Right? And that's the problem. Is where do you come like saying shit like where do you come off talking about this? Well, you know what? We all played it and we know what worked and what didn't for us. Therefore, that's where we're coming from.
Right. So I guess my last point, to make on that, because I entirely agree, with all that stuff there for sure. The thing is about how to get forward from there. I don't think it, regardless of whether this is by design or not, but homogenizing the flight model and making it easier for everyone to participate is not the right way of going about it. Let people be stupid, crazy good and stupid, crazy toxic, but you need to have a play space for the people that aren't as good to play. So you need proper matchmaking to get people into matches of equal skill level.
Well, let's stop you right there because you're talking about Arena Commander. We're talking about Star Citizen. There's no matchmaking in Star Citizen or Arena Commander. So yes.
Right.
Or there
but
is
in
an
Star Citizen, the map is so big, you never have to PvP. If we're talking about end game, like day one release to commercial release, you should be able to just go, I'm going to fly to the first star on the left straight on till morning and never find an RS guy. You know what I'm saying? So that's always there for people like that. You can go into high sec and just go and do whatever you want and never have to worry about getting shot by someone who's going to call you something awful in Twitch chat or something. You know what I mean?
That doesn't matter.
That's always there for those people. But if there's places for them to play theoretically, but we just need to get there is kind of what I'm saying. And that people that are dedicated enough should be able to come in and say, this makes sense. Here's a big description why, here's a video, here's a chart, here's a big write-up. And if nothing's being done about that and their game's getting thrown out the window, then they should be a little bit mad about it.
Of course. No one's saying they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I made the video.
Yeah.
That's the point. I'm trying to bring to light what I believe a large component of the quiet community is not able to say. And I'm not saying that
your
like, you know,
video,
like,
I think will get the most attention, but Kreion's video. I'm not sure if you saw his. Yeah, the art of Star Citizen Fighters Combat on YouTube has a great breakdown of exactly everything that's happened from patch to patch and what should, you know, in his opinion, change to get things back into a skill-based, you know, high ceiling system. So I suggest that everybody who gives any sort of shit about combat should watch that to kind of get some perspective, because we have a lot of people that are rolling lanes like 3.0 and stuff.
Do you mind DMing it to me? I'll put it in the description. Either of you two?
for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, like it's really good. It's really comprehensive. There's great visual aid, and yeah. So if you've only been playing since 3.0, or if you're only a cargo pilot.
Okay. Yeah, and Gorgon, I'll leave you there because we're about 2 hours now, so it's probably time to say goodbye to everybody.
This was completely productive.
I really appreciate your call. It was very productive.
Yeah. Thanks for sneaking me in, guys. HHN forever. Praise the.
Get out of here with your fucking
guy.
That guy is the Hand of the Exile, I'm pretty sure. So anyway,
Is he?
Oh, I don't know. So anyway,
I fear him.
Yeah. Get out of here with your advertisements. But yeah, just I think before I'll let you guys make your final little thoughts for the show real quick at the end, but I think it was productive. I don't think we got too personal until a little bit there at the end.
Nope.
Yep.
And I think
you, Darj.
Yeah.
You're the root of all evil.
Oi. Come over here and fuck me yourself.
All right.
Whoa. Monkatas.
Right? That escalated too.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I think hopefully somebody sees this and sees like where everybody's coming from, and hopefully everybody kind of formulates their opinions and shares them with what they think and goes about it in a respectful way, because I think nobody would agree that the flight model is where it needs to be right now, right? And it's like Noob said in the beginning of this video, it's 7 years, guys. This is not good. This is what we were supposed to have early, and by the time we got to the PU, it should have been resolved. At least before we got to 3.0, it should have been resolved, in my opinion. Once we knew we had moons, planets, quantum travel, all that stuff should have been figured out. It's not. So let's get there as soon as possible so we can move to the important things, like what these combat pilots are going to do when they attack somebody and kill somebody, and maybe make that more interesting with little tweaks and balances between shields and all these things. You can't do any of that stuff until we know how the ships are going to fly, right? I really don't think you can. You can't make all these little power management development things until we know how to fly. It's hard, and that's why a lot of people aren't playing that are from Noobifier's kind of side of things, is because they don't want to put in the effort to try and figure out the flight model. So I think that's fair, and I think where Darj is coming from is super fair too, because I don't think the flight model was great in 1.3. I don't think it was great. I think it needed work, and I don't think having maneuvering thrusters and bouncing all over the place was a good thing either. And I think we were excited to see some changes get made, and I don't think they were the best changes. So we'll have to see. But Noob, before you go,
I don't think they're finalized changes either.
I agree.
I have one closing point.
Let's go.
It's not us and them. It's not cargo runners and dogfighters.
It can't be.
It's us and them working together.
Yeah.
If you're worried that you can't run dogfighting, don't worry, because I don't want to run cargo. Right? Let's link up. We share the mission. We even have a system for that, more or less. Anyways, it's supposed to be that way. That we negotiate a price. I'm going to get you from point A to point B, and I'm going to get good reputation and a payment for that. And I will make sure that nothing touches your shields. That's the point. Just as much as anyways, and this is org-centric. I have an entire org that's built around the concept of everyone being great at one thing that they want to do. We have a gigantic component that's combat. We have a lot that's cargo, mining, and all that stuff. And the intent is that we should be able to play together and have fun. And right now, there's no reason to do combat. So that was the point of the video, to try to identify what's going on with the past so that we can find a good way forward, and just generate this exact this exact platform. So thanks, Mike, for
Yeah,
this.
no problem, Noob. Thank
And,
you. Thank you for putting
I-
the video out and revitalize.
Right.
Like, I think the big thing is that we did start to, like, I think the majority
Started
of
talking about it again.
we started talking about it again. It was ignored for a while, right? It really was. We were like, all right, they'll figure it out. And then they just started working on hover mode. And you're like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, what's actually important and what's a priority? And I think I can't imagine that anyone thought hover mode was a priority. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Hopefully, I was right that this proximity assist is the first step in getting back to a great flight model for everybody, including combat pilots. But that was 1,000% speculative. But Darj, you got the floor. We'll finish off with you, and yeah. Final thoughts, man.
I think we already did the final thoughts before we went with the colors.
I agreed. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay. It needs work, and hopefully they'll listen to us. And hopefully, is it too late to wish for a more focused forum for us to present our concerns to CIG, or are they too far removed from that?
They don't listen.
They don't
They don't
listen.
listen.
I fucking feel they don't.
I think they do listen, but I don't think.
Let me say this: they have their own agenda
Yeah.
that doesn't happen to coincide with mine, and that's fine. They're building the game. It's just it would be really nice if they would not say stuff like, "Oh, all of the design documents from the past that we presented and that you funded the game on
don't matter."
Like, don't rely on those too much. Like, we're doing it from the seat of our pants. Shit like that. Although I understand the intent of what he was trying to say, doesn't give any confidence to anybody. And that again is a completely different video, I think, that you've already covered. But it's that sentiment that makes videos like mine and what we're trying to achieve potentially. When I say what I'm trying to achieve is bring to light some stuff that is historical and is very broken and should be getting more attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was the point, and I think it worked. So we're talking about it, but we'll see what people in the comments say. I do want to say, Noob, Darj, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think we had a really fun show, and I look forward to talking to you guys. Yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys again in the future. So we'll see. We'll see, man. But I think we all agree we need some work. So, all right, guys. I'll do the little YouTube thing, I guess. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. I really want to hear what you guys say in the comments about this. And I'm sure Noob and Darj will probably stop by and see what you guys have to say as well. So let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next Answer the Call. So we'll see. Bye, everybody.